The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
The Baltimore Ravens, they get him. They signed Jaire Alexander.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
The Ravens are clear. They are clear Super Bowl favorites with this move. You add Jaire Alexander onto the squad, into the secondary, and the fact of the matter is, you look at the deal, you look at the actual contract that was signed here, he didn't break the bank. He didn't break the bank. It was a deal for $4 million. It can go up to $6 million with incentives. That, to me, signals that Jaire Alexander wants to win. I talked about it literally on today's show this morning, where if Jaire wants to win, take a lesser contract for a year, play to win a Super Bowl, and then go somewhere else, or even maybe re-sign with the Ravens, who knows, on a bigger contract to get him one last huge payday, Baltimore would be the spot for him. He would absolutely be, like, it'd be a perfect fit because he can play on a team to win that championship, and then he can also go and get the money. It's the best of both worlds, and I think Lamar reaching out to him was a big deal. Obviously, those two go way back. They reunite in Baltimore after their days at Louisville. I'm sure something that they have probably talked about a lot since they got drafted back in 2018. There's the viral clip of Jaire celebrating after Lamar got drafted. I essentially am talking a lot about my points on today's show. And look, that show lasted, about 6 hours with Lamar's comments, and now we got the actual move happening. And, Cam's saying it right here. The Ravens replaced Brandon Stevens with Jaire Alexander, and you also replaced Marcus Williams with Malachi Starks. That is two clear upgrades for you in your secondary. I have the highest expectations for this secondary. Jaire is an incredible player. Let's talk about Jaire, the player, a little bit. Let's get into who he is. Now, we know the injuries are a factor, right? Jaire has only played in 7 games in each of the last 2 seasons. But when he is on, he is on. He is a 2-time Pro Bowler. He's a guy that will force turnovers for you, but, he had his career year in 2022 with 5. He's not going to be the super high interception player. He hasn't been that most seasons in his 7 years in the league. He's only had 12 interceptions, but that's not necessarily what you're getting him for. You're getting him for a couple of different reasons. First of all, I love the versatility the Ravens can now throw out. Not that they couldn't before, but this truly, you can move Marlon inside to the slot. You can rotate guys in and out on the outside. We know Baltimore loves their 3 cornerback rotations on the outside with a slot guy. So you can either put Marlon in there, you can put Kyle Hamilton down in the slot, Malachi Starks can play in the slot. Like, you have so many players that can do that for you. And now you add a shutdown cornerback in Jaire, who, again, when he's healthy, he's still a top 10 corner in the league, in my opinion. He is still a top 10 corner in the league when he's healthy. Now, the thing is, he has to stay healthy, but this is kind of what we talked about with DeAndre Hopkins, where when he's healthy, right, he's only been healthy in about one of the last 4 seasons, one of the last 3, if I remember correctly. But 3 of those years for DeAndre, he's been hurt, he's been in and out of lineups. But when he's healthy, he can still contribute to you. The difference with Jaire is he is still, like, in the smack dab of his prime here. I mean, Jaire, he's not old. He's not old. He's only 28. He's only 28 years old. So to me, this is a player that you can have for this season. He plays really well. I would reward him. Now, I don't know if the cap situation for Baltimore would be able to accommodate him and Marlon and, all the extensions that they're going to have to figure out. But I think that Jaire, because of the injuries, has been underrated, and I'm sure that's part of why he did take a deal for less money here, right? It's a big conversation. It's a big conversation with the health. But here's the thing. It'd be different if Jaire were signing with Baltimore to be their number 1 cornerback, because the thing is, Baltimore didn't need Jaire Alexander. They didn't need him to win a Super Bowl. but man, does he help their chances. Man, does he help them out. Man, I cannot believe this is real. And the fact that it was such a quick turnaround, I mean, Lamar must have known something, right? Lamar must have known something was going on there with Jaire. There's no Eric calls up Jaire at 4:30 yesterday. Hey, Jaire, you want to come play? Jaire says yes. He comes. Nah, something had to be happening, right? Something had to be happening. So, man, I tell you, this has been like for me 4 or 5 years in the making of me wanting Jaire on the Ravens for the fact that I thought he'd be such a good fit. This is like celebration maximum for me, and I'm glad that we can do it all here together on Locked On Ravens. I love these live shows because we can interact in the chat. It's awesome, and I forgot about this too. Iconic talking about replacing Arthur Millette with Chidobe Awuzie. Chidobe Awuzie is your 4th cornerback now, and you can do a lot with him too. Like all of that. Now you have that secondary. Let's just go over the secondary right now. Not even just the cornerback room, because we talked about those guys. Marlon Humphrey, Jaire Alexander, Nate Wiggins, Chidobe Awuzie, TJ Tampa, et cetera in that room. But then you also have Kyle Hamilton and Malachi Starks. You have a big five, a starting five in basketball, let's call it here. A starting five of Kyle Hamilton, Malachi Starks, Marlon Humphrey, Jaire Alexander, and Nate Wiggins. It's the new no-fly zone. It is the new no-fly zone. But again, everybody has to stay healthy. But this is also a big deal where, okay, what if Marlon has to miss a game or two? Or what if Nate Wiggins has to be on the sideline for a little bit? And of course, knock on wood, that doesn't happen. This is such important depth. It is such important depth for the Ravens because we've seen years that have been ruined by cornerback injuries. You can never have enough corners. And the Ravens are a team that, again, they wait things out, right? And I talk about this all the time. If you've been listening to me here on the show, I talk about this all the time, where they like to see markets develop. And they're never going to be a team, at least usually. I know 2022 when they signed Marcus Williams, Morgan Moses, et cetera, that was maybe the exception of the rule. But they usually never go and spend $100 million on, 5 free agents on day one. They like to keep the money. They like to be strategic with it, and they'd like to see how things develop here. If the Ravens had blown away all their money on the first couple of days of free agency, and then they wouldn't have had the opportunity to sign a Jaire potentially. And I know that the deal itself is so small in the grand scheme of things relative to what he could have made that, yeah, maybe they still could have snuck it in there. But, I cannot get this point across enough. I already was having the Ravens in that top-tier upper echelon Super Bowl contender this year, right? The roster was already that good. Jaire pushes them to me. They're the Super Bowl favorite. I'm going to pick them to win the Super Bowl every single time now. And it's not just me. Oh, I'm a host of a Ravens show. I cover the Ravens. No, I'm objective with it, right? I'm objective. I didn't know if Baltimore and that roster was going to be able to beat Philly. I think they had a shot to. They definitely had a shot to, but it wasn't that clear cut to me. But with Philly losing some of their guys, they replenished it in some ways. I think Baltimore's roster is the best roster in football with Jaire being added. And yeah, Charlie's saying $6 million for Jaire is it's unbelievable. It is unreal how big of a steal this is. And that's the thing too. If they had signed him to a $20 million deal, they had to cut somebody or maybe let somebody go next offseason to do it. Yeah, we'd be having a different conversation, but it is such a no risk. I'm not even calling it low risk. It is no risk with Jaire and that talent. When you get him for that little, yes, the injury, and I saw someone, I can't find the comment, I apologize, but I saw some people talking about how for Jaire, yes, the talent is legitimate, but the injury concerns scare you. I don't blame you at all if you're on the injury train with Jaire. But it just, the money itself is so minuscule in the grand scheme of things that, at least for a player like Jaire's talent, that, at this point, it's over with for a lot of this league. And look, we see in the division, you got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. You got DK Metcalf. Browns have receivers. You have to account for that. I'm going to be going up against tough receivers for the whole year. You start off with a lot of tough games. They can start quickly with Jaire Alexander. The Ravens always make these moves when I'm doing something, by the way. They always make these moves when I'm doing something. Now, luckily, I wasn't tied up for the 3 hours I was when Rashad Bateman got signed to his extension. But I tell you, I was out and about. I was doing stuff with that extension. And then here I'm doing stuff, and I check my phone, and I'm like, this has to be a typo, right? Because I couldn't believe it And then I couldn't believe the money they got him for. The Ravens signed Jaire Alexander, one of the best days I think ever I've had on this show, because this is me. Look, sometimes you just got to speak it into existence. And to me, if you've been listening to me every day, I tried so hard to speak this thing into existence. And everyone was like, there's no way, there's no way, there's no way. This was probably the only way this could happen. Jaire gets cut. He wants to win a Super Bowl. The deal is not going to break Baltimore's bank. And here we are. And here we are. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Jaire is such a good player, shutdown corner, really good cover guy. And, again, for him, he's not going to be the super high turnover player for them. At least, he could be in this defense with how many guys are. Because, look, where do you want to throw the ball? Where do you want, unless you're Joe Burrow, who does have a couple of elite targets to throw to, which, again, the Ravens now have 3 elite corners plus 1.5. I'm going to call Malachi half an elite safety because he hasn't played a snap yet. So I think Malachi can be great, but I want to be objective with it and say he hasn't played a snap yet. 1.5 elite safeties. Where are you throwing the ball to? Where are you throwing the ball to? Because, oh, hey, you don't want to challenge Marlon Humphrey? That's all right. Well, here's Nate Wiggins. Oh, Nate Wiggins is playing great. He's a really good corner. Oh, well, we don't want to challenge him. Let's go on to the third guy. Oh, yeah, that's just a Pro Bowler in Jaire Alexander. Well, where else are we going to throw the ball to? What about the tight ends? Well, you got Kyle Hamilton coming down to cover that guy, or Roquan being in coverage on that. Like, this defense is stacked. This team is stacked. This, to me, is the best secondary the Ravens, have had in a long time, maybe ever. This roster is by far the best roster Lamar Jackson has ever had in the era that he's been with the team. And you now have a situation where, now you got to run the ball, try to get them that way. Hey, the Ravens were a pretty good run defense, a la, hey, the best in the league last season against the run. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Everything is laid out in front of us, all right? There's a difference between just blindly saying a team is a Super Bowl contender or blindly saying they're the favorites and then ignoring stuff. Literally, where is the hole on this roster? Right? Because the last thing I said on this morning's show, I just was on it this morning, I guess. I knew what I was talking about. What I said this morning is that the last hole the Ravens needed to fill was in the secondary, right? And I talked about safety with Ardarius, but if it's not a safety, Jaire Alexander would do it. Like, that would be it. And now I think Jalen Armour-Davis probably moves to safety full-time. If I had to guess, assuming he makes the roster, he could maybe stay at corner, but we know the Ravens are experimenting there. Man, I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. $6 million for Jaire Alexander. This was the last hole that the Ravens needed to fill. And here they are together, Lamar, and I'm looking right now on social media with Lamar and Jaire reuniting. They're the clips. And again, like Lamar is a master recruiter here. I mean, as I said, when the Ravens hear Lamar says something, the Ravens listen. This is a partnership. And look, the Ravens know how good Jaire Alexander is, all right? Like, it's not just, oh, wow, Lamar turned us on to this really good corner. Who is this guy? No, of course it didn't go that way. The Ravens understand how good of a player Jaire Alexander is. But we saw Lamar back in 2023. He said, hey, I'd love it if I played with Odell Beckham Jr. or DeAndre Hopkins, right? That was kind of Lamar's thing. The Ravens signed Odell to appease Lamar and to get him in the building and say, hey, Lamar, we hear you, and here's one of your guys. And then a couple years later, now DeAndre is on the board. And then Lamar says, go get him, Eric. And he probably, now looking back on it, he knew something. He had to have known something. But regardless, I'm sure Lamar did have those conversations. As Lamar did have conversations, I'm sure. This organization listens to their star player. And that's what I love, because I said on this morning's show, some organizations would just laugh the guy off or not take their opinion into account. Man, that to me is the big thing.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We talked about Darby on a show before, but we know that he walked away. Houston also has Jaylen Smith, who I will continue until I see otherwise. Kind of refer him as a player that I see blossoming in the Jalen Petrie role. Can he play outside? I can't wait to see. But in terms of outside cornerbacks, Kamari, Sting, Smith, Callaghan, D'Angelo Ross, and now Damon Arnette, former Las Vegas Raider first-round pick back in 2020. Played a season and a half. Had off-the-field issues. Don't want to dive into those. They're documented. You can go find them. But he was let go by the Vegas Raiders. Spent some time out of the NFL. Spent some time recently in the UFL where he posted 20 tackles, which is, pretty good. 19 tackles, an interception, a pick six for the Birmingham Stallions. And this was a player who came out of Ohio State, a lot of high expectations. We talked about him a few weeks ago when the Houston Texans worked him out, gave up big plays in his time in the NFL. He's 28 years old now, so the maturity is there. He even talked about being a more professional player now, so there isn't necessarily the concern of lack of maturity. Houston is a great place for players who have had issues in the past because of the culture, Houston has created to give themselves a rebound opportunity. With that being said, first-round talent, first-round grade back in 2020, this does not move the needle at all for Houston. It gives them depth, and I will say, hey, kudos to Houston for getting this deal done now, June 18th. June 18th, giving him an opportunity to get in the building. No details of the contract have been put out there yet, but he'll be able to get caught up to speed. He'll be here for training camp. He'll be a part of the competition to where now when we look at the outside cornerbacks, like I mentioned, Houston has 6, potentially 7 outside corners that will compete for a spot. Now, we already know 2 of those spots will be locked up, and that's Stingley and that's Lassiter. Based off of talent coming out of college, can Arnette beat out some of these guys? That's where training camp will get interesting. The conversation that I want to plant in your ears now is, okay, the Houston Texans currently has about $10 million in salary cap after signing Nick Chubb, a little bit north of that. I suspect the Houston Texans will also create some flexibility to give themselves a little bit more of a cushion. Once we get to training camp, once we get past the second game of preseason, they'll make some cuts. Maybe they'll look to save money that way as well. But I am suspecting for the Houston Texans, because they open up their season against LA, then they go to Tampa. They play the Buccaneers. LA Buccaneers, 2 division games. Those division games will always be played hard. And then I believe it is Baltimore that they play early in the season. Then they go into a week 6 bye. Houston will get a great opportunity to see where their defense is in terms of the starters in depth. They'll also get a good opportunity to see where their offense is in terms of starters in depth. Houston will have some money. I think they'll leave themselves open to go out there and either make a trade or sign one of these players that will either be released after preseason or that may be available right now. They'll get a good look at their roster, and they'll go out and make a move to make sure that they have everything possible to get their team over the hump. That move could come by offensive line. That move could very well come by cornerback depth. That move could very well be to bring in some more assistance at the wide receiver position. But Houston is not done yet. This move, signing Damon Arnette, and he's coming to a great organization. If you don't get it right here in Houston, then I don't see him getting another shot in the NFL. He'll have a chance to compete, but I don't think this moves a needle. I think this is just another opportunity for Houston to figure out what they have in some of the guys that are on the bottom half of the roster, which is, for Houston, I guess that's a good thing. I want guys to keep in mind that this is a critical year for the Houston Texans. Getting to the divisional round is nice. It's cute. Getting over that hump is the goal for the Houston Texans. And I think that between Nick Caserio on down to D'Amico Ryans, keeping options open is important. Very important. So Houston signs Damon Arnette. They worked him out about 10 days ago, a couple weeks ago now. Got him here before training camp. What type of player will he be? I don't think this is anything to overreact to or underreact to. I think this is just a reaction. But what type of player will he be? What type of presence can he bring for the Houston Texans on and off the field? And does he have any of that Ohio State talent? And by the way, how many Ohio State cornerbacks work out in the NFL? But we'll see what value he brings to the Houston Texans, if any. He could very well be a part of the first round of cuts. He could very well be the C.J. Henderson of last season. But he could. We don't know yet. I mean, he had a very decent year for UFL, but UFL talent and NFL talent, two different things.
The NBA playoffs are almost over. In fact, they could end this very evening. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action while you still have a chance. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props from three-pointers to steals and assists. There's so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You can place that first $5 bet on some NFL playoff dark horses. The Carolina Panthers sit at plus 240 to reach the postseason. The Bears plus 190 and the new-look Raiders plus 320. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Will Arthur Smith be more willing to allow Aaron Rodgers change plays than he was Russell Wilson?
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast.
Aaron Rodgers is still a big focal point for this team that people are trying to figure out, understand how things are going to work. And one of the things that I do think is an interesting question that we will have to see how it plays out is the relationship between him and Arthur Smith, not just in how Arthur Smith designs the offense around Aaron Rodgers, but in how much freedom Aaron Rodgers is given at the line of scrimmage. We know it was a big deal for Russell Wilson that Arthur Smith was basically like, I don't want you changing stuff at the line of scrimmage towards the end of the season. And that led to some differences. And of course, Russell Wilson isn't around anymore and Aaron Rodgers is brought in. But of course, Aaron Rodgers is a 4-time MVP. He's the guy who's known for his cerebral ability. And it seems like that would be an advantage you'd want. But let's get to the question here coming from Steve from Bakersfield, California.
Hello, CC. This is Steeler Steve, again from Bakersfield, California. Love your show. I have a quick question. I like that we got Aaron Rodgers. My question was, do you think Arthur Smith's going to allow Aaron Rodgers to be Aaron Rodgers, especially in a 2-minute drill? Aaron Rodgers is a West Coast quarterback. Arthur Smith's not. Let me know what you think about that. Thank you. Love your show. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, Steeler Steve. Appreciate your question. As always, if you want to call and leave your question just like he did, you can call 412-223-6644. Just leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. We'll try to get your question on the show soon. We have a lot of people that have called in and piled up questions. But, Steve, I do think that Arthur Smith's going to yield a little bit to Aaron Rodgers here because Aaron Rodgers is different than Russell Wilson in what either guy brings to the table. Russell Wilson was a step up from where they had been, because where they had been was pretty rough quarterback play across the board. And that's the improvement that you bring that you were hoping with there. You're saying, hey, Russell Wilson, you're coming in, your specialty is the moon ball, hitting those outside the numbers passes and kind of keeping your head to make solid plays in important moments of games, which he did for the most part for most of the season until the end of the season. But Aaron Rodgers is coming in. What Aaron Rodgers is very good at is being able to identify defenses, see what teams are doing, make adjustments, and be able to make really good decisions with the football and put things forward. Now, the Steelers, I think, don't want to concoct or to draw up their entire offense around Aaron Rodgers and like make this all about him, because they want this run game to flourish. They drafted Caleb Johnson for a reason. They've been building this offensive line for a reason. They want to be able to have a true balance to this offense. But yes, I do think the Steelers give Aaron Rodgers a bit more space to make adjustments. Now, I don't think it will be, wholesale. I don't think it'll be like, oh, you know what, Arthur, I don't like none of these plays. I'm going to just drop a whole new play in the sand. It's not like Madden, because if you play Madden, you can, every time you call a play, you could basically change like 5 things in 3 seconds. I used to do it when I used to play Madden, but that's not how real football works. What you're probably going to see is Aaron Rodgers come out and have multiple checks, and his ability to use different checks and the variety that he's given will probably be a bit wider. What's a check, you're probably asking? A check is, a simple call at the line of scrimmage. You're like, hey, you know what? When we come out in this formation with, 3 wide receivers, 11 personnel, 3 receivers, a running back and a tight end. If we come out in that and they come out and they're in the nickel with us, we're gonna check into this style of play, or check into this hot route, those types of things. So I think he'll have that, but especially in the 2-minute drill, I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to have full get to say, okay, you know what, we're going to trust you to just manage the situation, because he's managed it so well for most of his career. And if you're going to lean on anything from Aaron Rodgers, if his arm's still there, that's great. But the thing that you want to lean on is his cerebral ability as a quarterback. He's very good at reading defense. He's seen every defense in the NFL. And it's not to say he won't make mistakes and he won't make bad decisions, because every quarterback does. It's the nature of the game of football. But I think what you're going to see is him be able to take advantage of more natural things that are built into an offense, or take advantage of certain skill sets from different players. And that'll be the thing that can help get the Steelers extra yards here and there. I've talked about this with Mike DeFable before on this show. How many times have you seen a guy just get open on a quick slant and not get the ball in the Steelers offense because the quarterback was too busy doing something else? Aaron Rodgers won't have that problem. He's going to not only want to hit those, he's going to identify those a lot quicker than Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's where you're going to see the Steelers give him a bit more liberty than what was given to Russell Wilson. And also, again, Russell Wilson was brought in to just be that passenger. I think that Aaron Rodgers is being brought in. He's still, a passenger to the big scheme of things. But I think that Aaron Rodgers, with his pedigree and again being a 4-time MVP quarterback compared to Russell Wilson, who I think there's only 1 year where he's even received MVP votes, and it was not nearly enough to be in the final tally of like the top 3, I think. But I think that they're going to give Aaron Rodgers more leeway, and they should. I think that's why you brought him in. Now, again, you're not letting him completely recraft the offense. You still want to be a very balanced team. You still want to be able to run the ball. And I think you're and Aaron Rodgers has said, hey, I want to be a servant leader. So if he lives up to the expectations or the description of how he sees himself fitting into the Steelers offense, I don't think this will be a problem. I don't think that there'll be much going back and forth between him and Arthur Smith. As I brought up before, if you listen to Diana Rossini and her podcast for The Athletic, she talks to people to Arthur Smith off the clock, and there's a lot of belief that Arthur Smith is going to be able to, he's going to enjoy, crafting an offense specifically around Aaron Rodgers' skill set and adapting things. And he better, because you should adapt to your players each year. But I do think that when you see this, Aaron Rodgers is going to get the liberties, and especially those 2-minute drills. It's going to be like, hey, Aaron, we're going to give you like 2-3 plays, but if we go no huddle, we're letting you rotate through what you need to rotate through. Don't feel like the need to have to sit back and listen to every call that comes through there. We'll give you what we're thinking, but I do think Aaron Rodgers is going to get a bit of say, especially in the 2-minute drills.